You kinda caught me at a bad time. I'm in a motel. Wait, does your car have a trunk? I was reading the book Overcoming Mobbing. It's a study of bullying on the job site. What I found of particular interest was the claim that workplace mobbing can be described as psychological terrorism, according to Heinz Lineman. What made it particularly interesting was the fact that the book came out in 2014, several years before COVID. And there in its pages is described the method for bullying someone, in the form of social distancing. We can see here in this section, capitalizing on social distancing and mobbing. One of the early signs of mobbing is social distancing. Increasingly, the target is isolated and ostracized. It's fascinating that as they were inducing mass formation psychosis, they were using the same techniques of psychological terror as workplace mobbing. They had of course used their social scientists to study how to bully people into compliance for decades, like the famous Milgram experiment. The Milgram experiments on obedience to authority figures were a series of social psychology experiments conducted by Yale University psychologist Stanley Milgram. They measured the willingness of study participants, men in the age range of 20 to 50 from a diverse range of occupations with varying levels of education, to obey an authority figure who instructed them to perform acts conflicting with their personal conscience. Participants were led to believe that they were assisting an unrelated experiment in which they were to administer electric shocks to a learner. These fake electric shocks gradually increased to levels that would have been fatal had they been real. The experiment found unexpectedly that a very high proportion of subjects would fully obey the instructions, albeit reluctantly. Long story short, about 80% of people they discovered would obey anyone in a lab coat. Associated with science, they were seen as an authority figure. Only about 20% of the populace had the mental strength to maintain their ethical structure. The rest just capitulated to perceived authority, even when the actor in the lab coat was not in fact a scientist. Milgram pretended publicly that as a Jew, he wanted to find out what happened in Nazi Germany, so that an episode like that could never happen again. In reality, however, what they were studying was how to reverse engineer it, so that they could replicate it. Kind of like how they studied meme transmission in the 1990s, and told the public that they were just interested in urban legends. In reality, they were releasing outlandish tales, such as those regarding Richard Gere or Rod Stewart. They wanted to track how these memes proliferated across the society so that they could better understand the transmission mechanisms that they would later use in propaganda campaigns. Likewise in the early 2000s, with their alleged anti-bullying rollouts. Like the Milgram experiment, these pretended to be against bullying. But in fact, they were studying things like social distancing, workplace mobbing, and determining how to use the techniques to press people into compliance. I remember gay activist Dan Savage being tapped by the Obama administration to be a so-called anti-bully. Even at the time, people were pointing out that Savage himself was a bully. He encouraged people with AIDS to spit on doorknobs to spread psychological terror. He also bullied people like Rick Santorum, naming a certain strain of gastrointestinal discharge after him and popularizing it. These were intimidation tactics. Kind of strange coming from somebody calling himself an anti-bully. Tim Field, likewise, was another so-called anti-bully associated with an organization called Bully Online out of the UK. We read, National Ban Bullying at Work Day is held in annual memory of Andrea Adams and Tim Field, two pioneers who devoted their lives to eradicating bullying. Not so often mentioned is Adams' co-author, Tavistock psychotherapist Neil Crawford. Did they just mention Tavistock? That's a reference to the Tavistock Institute in England, which ran mind control and social science experiments starting in the 1940s up to the present. They were instrumental in the CIA's famous MKUltra experiments, as well as having ties to the CIA's Yale connections with unsavory figures like Stanley Gottlieb and the aforementioned Stanley Milgram of the Milgram experiments. So was the anti-bullying psyop run out of the Tavistock Institute as well? The point being, the more mass formation psychosis comes into focus and the tools of psychological terrorism are uncovered, a disturbing picture unfolds of what we all just lived through.
Take your ass outside if you don't want to wear no mask.
You're wasting your breath. You're wasting your
Nasty
breath.
son of
You're wasting your breath.
Get your nasty ass out of here.
Respect for your own kids.
My kids got on a mask.
Yeah,
You
I
have respect for everybody else.
Your language.
Everybody else got on a mask. Your ass
Your
up.
mouth is
Get
different.
the out of my face. Get your ass out of my face. So you know who started? The people that ain't got on no mask.
See?
You a yourself.
Oh, no, you're the devil.
Do you want the police to meet you on the ground?
What about him?
Mask up. Now.
Mask up.
Put your mask up.
Mask up. Tell him
You
to
got
mask
your
up.
mask down.
Sir,
Yes, I did.
stop it again.
Now you're going to jail. That's assault. You're going to jail. As soon as we get in Atlanta, you're going to jail. Karen, They spit on me. Now you double goes to jail.
Piece of
Piece of pussy, sit down, Karen. Sit down, Karen. Sit down, fucking Karen. Look, she punched me.
Put
She
your mask on. Tell him to put his mask on. Put your mask
punched
on.
me. She scratched my face. I wanted to fuck.
Fucking mask on.
I can give you one.
Why do
I need you to wear a mask.
So you can hand me a mask,
I can hand you one, yeah.
but you can't hand me the drink without a mask?
You've got to wear a mask.
How does that make any sense?
That's what I just need you to wear a mask. Do you mind?
Well, if you can hand me a mask, why can't you just hand me the drink?
I can hand you the mask.
The New American Magazine is now on Locals. It's a for-pay platform for like $5. It gives you access to extra content and allows you to support your favorite hosts. As I said before, think of it like throwing some coins into the cup of a street performer. Check it out at thenewamerican.locals.com.